All right, welcome back, everybody. We are going to now dive into my personal favorite, which is crawlers. So this is going to be crawler basics. I'm really excited to show you crawlers because most often when I'm using the tool, for me, the most important thing is actually going deep into a directory or a site and gathering all the data for some sort of analysis or use. And so this is kind of my favorite use case here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to scrape the top 1,000 Twitter users. So I know it's on Twitaholic. There it is. Wait for this to open. And you could use the top 1,000 Twitter users for a lot of different reasons. You can start tweeting to them to try to get them to tweet about your product, especially if you're in e-commerce brand of sorts and you want to get some play on the Twitter feeds of one of these people. So here's the crawler option. We're going to click on that. And this is the start of the page that we want to be at, so we're going to click on there. And then we obviously have multiple results here, so let's do that one. And then allow it to detect the optimal settings. And our data is still there, so click yes. Okay. Now, I had a look at this page before I brought it into Import.io. I always kind of just mess around on the pages that I'm looking to scrape while I'm in Google Chrome. Just it's a little bit easier. So I took a look ahead of time, and so this is what I talk about when we're saying, hey, look for patterns and URLs and how the list works. So this is the first 1 through 100 here on this first page here, and then you can see that they have this listed out into different sections. Now, if you hover over the second link down below there at the very bottom of the screen, you see that the way that this changes, it goes to top 200/followers, top 300/followers, top 400/followers, top 500/followers. So that's honestly going to make it really easy for us to find a pattern and be able to go through and scrape this. But this is the type of thing that you always want to look out for. If you see a URL structure like this, it's very easy to scrape. Great target to scrape because it's really not going to take you much time to go through that. So it's got us on training rows. So let's start by training these rows. And this is also a beautiful example of a page that has 100 results there for us right here. So remember, we need to make sure that we select all of this information in this first row. And from what it looks like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that without just kind of highlighting over it. So we're going to do that. But press train row. Train row again, and that'll probably get it to go to the rest of the page. Yep. Okay, so we've got all of our rows, which is perfect. And now we're going to start getting our columns. So there's a lot of useful information here. Some of it's not as important. Like I personally don't really care how many updates they have. If they have a Twitter following this big, and if they have a Twitter account that's in the top 1,000, chances are they're active enough for our use case. So don't necessarily worry about that, but something to take into consideration, I guess. So let's start with, we'll just go from left to right. We're going to get the thumbnail and change that to image. Got that. And now that should train itself. Nice. Good work, Lady Gaga. Really classy image. All right, so let's get their Twitter screen name. Or actually, this is just their... Let's see, it's just... We'll put that as name. And name link. We'll say name link because it actually is a link. And we'll grab that for our use case. It might come in handy later on. So I'm going to go through and highlight this specifically. I'll just call it screen name. Let's see if it recognizes all of them or if we're going to have to highlight through. It's thinking hard. Okay, we're going to have to do a couple of these to get it to recognize. This just happens sometimes. If you actually hover over this, you can see that it puts it all in one element here. So sometimes if you're going to select individual elements out of a box like this, you just have to train it a little bit better. So we're just going to keep going through this until it catches on and selects all of them. See, it took 3. So usually it takes 2 for a lot of those instances, but sometimes it's a little more tricky for it to catch on based on how the page is structured in the background. So no big deal. We got what we wanted now. And let's go ahead and do location next. This is really cute, Justin. You're all around the world, man. And this one shouldn't be any issue. Yep, got that. And URL. Now this one's actually pretty awesome to grab. And I'm just gonna grab those as links so they're clickable in the results. You can do a lot of different things with the URL. I think it's really very powerful because when you click through these URLs, you get access to a lot more information. So there's a lot of other tools out there that you can throw a list of URLs into for different types of analysis. So I'd encourage you to think creatively and just figure out some different ways that you might be able to use those results. Pretty awesome stuff. All right, so let's get their follower count as well. All right, got it. Now let's get how many people they're following. You see that? Beebs is a man of the people. 121,000 people that he's following. Katy Perry doesn't like anybody. 125. All right, let's get to their updates count. Just for good measure. And you know what? Just because we can, we'll just get the date they joined as well, or however many months ago they joined. Looks like Brock's been putting in work a little bit longer than everybody else. And most importantly, I guess I kind of forgot this in the beginning here, let's get their rank. Alrighty, once that loads here. Again, apologies if the fan becomes an issue at all. This app combined with Camtasia is really making my Mac run pretty hot. Alright, so we have their ranks, and I know it's kind of, OCD wise, it's a little bit annoying that it's over here on the right, but we can adjust that at any point in time later on down the road, no big deal. So I've got what I need. Now, a crawler is a lot about training, so it requires the most training out of all the data sources. So you have the extractor and the connector. Connector just makes you do 2 different types of queries. You can do some additional training on the connector if you want. You can choose pages that don't have results, so you can train it for when you have a query that doesn't work, things like that. So those are all extra touches, and I would suggest you do those if you're going to be using this all the time, over and over again. So when you find a data source that's going to be useful for things in the future, and it is today, and you're going to probably scrape it a bunch of different times, that's when I find it useful to build tools and efficiencies around it, as well as go through all the steps that they suggest. So we're going to add another page here. I've already traveled to the top 200 page and click on there. And so this URL structure is actually, it's really, really easy, right? So what you'll see at the end of the crawler is that when we're going from page to page like this, that import.io will actually do a lot of work for us. It will start to recognize the patterns that appear in the URL structures. So it'll do a lot of that for you ahead of time. Now later on, like when I show you some of the different things that I'm doing with Yelp and scraping Yelp, it helps to have a spreadsheet on the side that pumps out huge lists of Yelp URLs, so you can just drop them into your crawler and let it run. I find that this is the best way to be very precise when you're talking about a site like Yelp, when the crawler can start exploring through the site and finding a bunch of different pathways. For me, I need to know that I got exactly what I wanted out of it, and that it went to every single page. And again, that's probably like a control thing, but it's really just trying to be precise so you know that you're getting all the data that you possibly can out of it. So I'll show you how to be more precise, kind of like a sniper, when it comes to crawling on those pages. So we've got all our rows here on the second page. We've got all the columns. Wait for this guy to load here. By the way, just a pro tip, if you find that your Mac runs hot too often or is kind of annoying, there's this great app called SMC Fan Control, which I have running right here. You can see that my fan is actually maxed out at 6,500 RPMs. That's as high as it goes. And this is a decently high temperature, not too bad. But you can actually change the settings to account for your Mac heating up, and if you put it on, they have this setting built in here. If you put it at 4,500 RPMs, you really can't hear it that much, not like you can when it's in full bore like this, but it actually stops the computer from getting hot most of the time. But in this case, there's not really anything we can do. All right, so we've got our second page. I'm going to scroll down here. Sorry if that speed gets anybody. All right, so we clicked on top 300. I'm going to click add another page. It's telling me to let it know when we're there, and we're here. So we're just going to do this. It does kind of feel a little monotonous sometimes, but honestly, on some sites it is very much required. But the good news is once you put this work in once, you can always re-scrape these things. And like I said, if you're doing something like Yelp, you can throw in pages of similar structure, even if they're not the original URLs you trained, and import.io will still go to town on those URLs because it'll recognize the structure and the patterns. So a little bit of work up front for a lot of reward later. And as you can see, a lot of this stuff, once you get the nuances, once you understand what can cause issues and figuring things out, you'll be able to train others on your team to help you with this. I know that's something that I'm doing right now, is just kind of teaching people how to use the tool. Obviously, that's what these courses are about, but also on our team at work, so that anytime somebody needs to get data somewhere, I don't necessarily have to do it for them. If I'm not available, they can do it themselves, and that way we're all being empowered to collect data when we need it. So it's pretty awesome. All right, so this is our fourth page. Click on there, and we'll try and speed this process up a little bit. Got my rows. And I most likely have my columns. Got them. Whenever I look through this, I'm so surprised at some of the top 1,000 accounts, because some of them I've just never heard of, excuse me. For instance, I had no idea that Hillary Duff was still relevant. So that's pretty funny to me. And then there's just a lot of other ones that you don't quite expect. Sean Kingston, for instance. Didn't expect that. All right. Yeah, look at Whole Foods. Crack the top 400. Alright, so we're going to add our final page of training. Like it says here, the crawlers need at least 5 pages. Alright. I'm just going to click, I've got my rows and I've got my columns here. And honestly, you know, when it's very structured like this, I've never had a scenario where I've had issues after the first page where it wasn't selecting anything. I'm sure it does happen, but a lot of the stuff I end up scraping is structured like this. It's something that's, you know, very neatly groomed, and it never really have too much of an issue here. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to bring me to a final page here where I have the option to train more pages if I want, but I'm not really interested in doing that. So I can add another page, or I can just say I'm done training. So the only thing I'm going to look at down here, because we're really talking about like a handful of pages, so we got 6,700, 800, 900, and then 1,000. So this is actually really easy for us to just add all of those pages on the next screen. So that's what we're going to do in this case, because it's only 10 pages, and we can do some typing there. So top 1,000 Twitter users. Okay, so this is the simple view. I almost always switch over to advanced. I just kind of started doing that right away when I first started using the software, and I just continually do that today because I like to have the granularity of the advanced pages. So I'm just going to first, before we do this crawl, I'm going to walk you through everything, just explain what the uses are, and they do a good job of giving you some info here as well. So I will I'll let you know some of the stuff that I've seen as well. Okay, so page depth. Basically what this means is for certain sites and certain crawls that you'll do, you won't be able to say, hey, these are the exact 200 pages I want you to go to, or something like that. Like, we'll see that with sites like Reddit and Hacker News, for instance. They have some patterns that are kind of randomized or irregular, so you won't see this kind of structured URLs like you do here on the Twitaholic site. So page depth comes in handy there when you don't know all of the exact pages that you want it to crawl, because then the crawler will actually go through and do a bunch of clicks on its own, and it'll grab a bunch of different data. And while that's really helpful for those sites, for me it actually drives me a little bit crazy letting it do that, because again, I want to be very precise in the data I get. I want to know that I got the data from the site that I needed. There are some ways to still run that way and get all the data you want. For instance, afterwards, when you're looking at the data in a spreadsheet and you're analyzing it, it does have the source page to any of the data that it pulls. So you'll be able to see the source, the page that it got that data on, and you can disqualify any pages that aren't in the scrape that you meant to do. So if it crawls these extra pages, you can kind of eliminate those, which, for instance, would happen sometimes on Yelp. If we didn't give the crawler very specific structure, it could just go bananas on Yelp, because there's so many links on Yelp, and you could find other ways around the site. So that's just a note on page depth. In this scenario, we're going to paste in all of these URLs very specifically. So we're going to set the page depth to 0, because it doesn't have to click at all. It's just, we're going to tell it to go to these pages specifically. Simultaneous pages. So I almost always leave this at 1. You can open up 10 pages at the same time, up to, if you want to. You know, earlier when we talked about kind of like scraping responsibly and not doing harm to the websites that you're taking information out of, unless it's like mission critical, it's like an emergency, you need this data really quickly, I honestly would just leave this at 1 in terms of the amount of pages that you open up. I've never had a situation where I just need this data so bad that I'm going to turn this up. It increases the likelihood that you'll get booted off the site halfway through or partway through your crawl. So when you can stay kind of conservative, you might as well. And then pause between pages, how much delay time between pages. If you set it to 0, it's going to be, again, very very quick to pull up all the pages on the site very quickly. And if you do say like a thousand URLs, that's a lot of sessions for it to open up. So I would often keep the pause between pages at 1. Every now and then you'll run into a site that boots you off, and you'll have to increase the pause so that their systems aren't kicking you off. So that's what that is. I honestly, 0, 1, and 1 is the typical setup that I run with. So where to crawl? So these boxes here allow you to put templates on each line. So it's asking us where to crawl here. So any page that matches this template will be visited. So here's some additional things you can use to type the templates. And this is a great example up here, right? So if we go back real quick and look at the structure, so we have twitterholic.com/top300/followers. Now, if we go back to this, you can imagine that there's some of these different structures that we could insert in there to make things make sense. So, for instance, if we did another template on the next page, or on another page, it'd be twitterholic.com/top, and then these brackets num/followers, because we know, first off, we know we want them on this page, but if we wanted to do another template, we would do something like this. Because we know that's always going to be a number. And so this means that the only pages that it will possibly scrape on would be a page that looks like this, or a page that looks like this. Now, because the first one we have here doesn't have any other structure after it, and there's probably lots of pages on Twitterholic that start with this, we're going to get very exact with the ones we go after. But that's just an example of how you could write out something that limits where the crawler is actually going to go and crawl through the site. So what that does is it speeds up your crawl. If it's kind of a crawl, like I said earlier, with like Reddit or Hacker News, where you're going to let it kind of go out and figure out its way on its own, this is a way to limit the types of pages that you don't necessarily want it to go to at all, or where you want it to go to specifically. Here's a where not to crawl, so you can do the same thing. If there's a specific set of pages that you do not want it to go to, you'll save yourself time by putting those in, especially if it's a big crawl. I've had crawls that have lasted 12 hours because there's just massive amounts of information that I want, and gotten 15 to 20,000 different records out of certain sites. So take the time to kind of understand what all these are and all these do. And again, you're gonna have to do a lot of experimentation with this at some point or another. My Yelp crawler took me quite a while to figure out, because well, I'll actually show you that in the later tutorials about Yelp, but needless to say, I had to do a lot of experimentation to get that one to work. So the next one is where to extract data from. So sure, I can crawl to pages like this, but where should I extract the data? And right now the import.io creates this for you. So it's like twitterholic.com/any, and then another slash, and then the end of the string. So this simplifies or symbolizes that there will be nothing after the slash. So this is great and all, but this is not how we're going to do what we're going to do today. So I'm just going to show you how to get in there like a sniper and get exactly what you want out. So we're going to actually edit these. So we're up to 500. We have the top 500 here. So 6. Okay, so we have 600 there. Alright, so we'll go 700, 800, 900, and then one more for good measure for 1,000. Okay, so this literally is all of the URLs that we want, and again, sometimes we'll do much bigger crawls. I've copied thousands of URLs into these boxes here before, and that's something you can definitely do. So just to be exact, this is what I do. I take that same set of results and copy them into all three of these. If I know exactly what URLs I want to go to, there's no reason not to. These are all considered individual templates, and the crawler isn't going to be doing any clicks, so it's literally just going to go to all these URLs that you want it to. Technically, in this last thing here, you probably don't need to copy these in, but I just do it just to be safe, and it's really easy. So at this point, you can click Go. You could click Reload the settings. You could go back to defaults. Another thing you can do is you can actually save a crawler log file. I haven't found this to be super useful to me thus far. If I ever run into an issue with a crawler, usually what I do is I'll get a hold of the Closio team if I can't figure it out. The Import.io team if I can't figure it out myself, and then they will have me export my IO file, which I'll show you how to do later. But we're not going to worry about that right this second. So we're going to click Run. All right, and this is where the magic happens. So you see right here, it tells you how many pages per hour it would do. Estimated length of the actual crawl. It's got 10 pages queued up. That's the pages we gave it. It's submitted 3 requests so far. It's converted 4 of them now, and it's grabbed us 400 rows. So we're about halfway through this job already. We haven't been blocked at all, and we haven't had any of the conversions fail or have any of the pages be unavailable. In some cases, you'll submit a huge set of links and the sites won't be available anymore. The links will be broken or something, and that would show up here. And then if also the conversion failed, it would show up here. And this is for if they have a text that says "do not crawl," and they can stop you from crawling in those situations. All right, perfect. So here we have the top 1,000 of Twitter, and we're going to click Upload. And it's just going to pull up a data set like we normally would have. Now, if you're like me, then your head is screaming with all the other awesome examples and probably even more useful examples than what this is right here. The reason I chose this to just give you the first basics is because it's actually fairly easy to get set up compared to everything else. So, as you noticed, they do kind of capture results in somewhat random order, so sometimes you have to sort by a particular number to get it to work right. And I'll say, I know this is new. This is like new territory for the team, this kind of display feature here. So it does sometimes lack something to be desired, so I think the easiest way to work with stuff is just to download it into a CSV or however you'd like to see it. I've actually never looked at it in HTML format before. We'll try that for another time, but you can download it in JSON file as well. I usually just do CSV, and then I can mess around with it. I'll either upload it into Google Spreadsheets or hand it off to somebody else on the team, depending on what we're using it for. So I'm going to save this. Now, again, over here, you can refresh these results using this widget here, but I will just want to point something out to you. This is going to be 2 different types of data sources. One's going to be a data source, and the other one's going to be a data set. So if we're talking about a list other than the top 1,000 Twitter users, that changes. So this is the data that we just saved. Again, we renamed that and saved it. But here's that crawler. So just to show you what it'd be like, if you go back into this crawler, so we're going to go back into this crawler, and we're assuming that, as an example, that this site is a site that we want to continually come back to, and maybe we have new sets of links. So it's not going to require me to train again. It's just going to say, I'm done training, and you click Run Crawler. And I'm sure they'll probably make that even easier as time goes on. But this is an example of like, okay, so if suddenly they started to document, say, the top 10,000 users, and all we had to do was put in extra URLs here, we could just copy over all these URLs and paste in a new set or keep the same ones, etc., and then run the crawler again. And because the structure of the page is the same, it will still run and still perform. So you don't necessarily need to train it on those brand new pages. And this is where that's where stuff gets really juicy. Like I said, with the Yelp example that we'll go through later, you'll be able to copy in tons of Yelp URLs and go through based on whatever your query is. And if you'll initially train it on a set of queries and then go back and do new ones all the time, and it's just amazing the amount of data that you can get out of this. So the other thing I will mention is that if I were to press go right now and this was like a long crawl and it was rolling, I can still go back and do other things. This is multi-tabbed for a reason. You can run multiple crawls at once. So if you have a 12-hour crawl running like I had that one time, then you can keep that open, let it go, let it keep rolling, and then go about your business and do some other stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of covering the crawler basics. I will show you some other examples when we start looking at the kind of like advanced recipes for other sites, where you'll do two things. You'll actually crawl results page like we had, so you see the results of the Twitter users, and then what you would do is you would make another crawler that goes through and reads the information off the links that we just pulled out. So you crawl, get a set of links, and then you build another crawler to take that set of links that came from your first crawl and go through those and mine the data from there. And so that's where you can get some really, really juicy stuff and do some really, really cool things. So I'll show you that stuff later on in the advanced tutorial. So thanks for making it through the first set of basics with me, and I'm really excited to hear your feedback. Until next time here.